Hey everyone, I recently shared a lab where I built a VXLAN fabric inside CML using Cisco's Crosswork Network Services Orchestrator. And Cisco NSO, as it's more commonly called, was actually installed on a Ubuntu host inside the CML lab that I built. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through how you can build your own NSO instance in CML and then tie it into the virtual network devices that we've got running in this lab. Now, I'm using the IOL, which is iOS on Linux L2, and the IOL, which is just the IOL iOS on Linux router, as devices, because I want to show you that you can actually manage these really lightweight devices with NSO. So you don't have to have, a Catalyst 8kV or a Nexus 9kV in here. We can use these very lightweight images and still manage and operate them out of NSO. Now, NSO is a paid-for product, but it comes as a free trial for development purposes that you can download from software.cisco.com. And here, if you do a search for Crosswork Network Services Orchestrator free trial, you will find the 6.5 release of the software and a couple of different network element drivers. So we've got one for ASA, iOS, XR, and Nexus. And in a couple of different ways you can install the software. The one we're interested in is this Linux x86 64 installer. Now I've already downloaded all of this along with the documentation, and I downloaded the iOS and Nexus NEDs. Now I'm going to show you how to install those two specific NEDs, but the steps that I go through to install them will work for ASA and iOS XR if you want to download those as well. Now if we go back to CML, I've got this simple lab here that I'm going to operate with. I've already started up NSO. We can see that I have the ENS2 interface of this NSO host and this GitLab host set up to my external connector, which is set up in bridge mode. I could have set this bridge mode external connector to an unmanaged switch and then connected it to both Ubuntu hosts. I just chose to hook them up to both systems individually. And then for the two Ubuntu nodes, I've configured some of the basic system settings. I've got my network set up, an IP address for my home network, my DNS server, and out-of-band management network, which is ENS3, and then IPs we might want access to on the internal network here off ENS4. And this is duplicated on the GitLab server. I'm not going to go through the GitLab installation in this video. I'll do that later because I really want to just focus on the NSO portion. And what's going to happen is basically we're going to get the server up. We're going to get to a point where it's updated, ready to go. And then we're going to start installing the packages. Now, again, I've downloaded everything. And what I'm going to do is move over to a PowerShell environment where I've downloaded the software to. And we're going to copy over our SSH key to the NSO server. And then we're going to go through and SCP the files over to NSO, to the Ubuntu server that we're going to run NSO and get the free trial set up. Now, before I do that, there is a documentation guide that I'm going to share in the comments or in the description. And this documentation is by far, I think, the best documentation I've seen in a long time. It provides you a lot of details. It has this great search tool. So if there's anything you wanted to look up, like, how do I use APIs? Like, let's just do a search for API. It'll pull up all the sections of the document that talk about, APIs. So it's a really cool document. I'm going to put this in the description so that you have access to it. And then we're going to go over and we're going to start installing the software by getting a copy of the system. So let's do that now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start installing the software on the NSO server. And the first thing we've got to do is copy our SSH key over. Now, I could make this part of the cloud config for the Ubuntu host, but I'd like to just kind of show you different ways to do things, and this is no exception. Now, if you're on a Windows machine like I am right now, you can do a cat of your id_rsa.pub in your SSH directory, and you can pipe that, and that'll hold the information from the id_rsa process and send it over this SSH session we're going to do and cat the data into the SSH authorized keys file that is sitting on the NSO server. Now, this is a very convoluted way on Windows to do what the ssh-copy-ID command would do. That's something that's available on Linux. So you could do ssh-copy-ID netadmin at host, and that will automatically copy over your IDRSA pub to the remote host into the authorized keys directory. For Windows, that's not a command that's available, so this is the way we have to do it. And there are other ways to do it, but this is, I think, the easiest way to do it. So we're going to cat that file, and we're going to SSH over to our system. We're going to go ahead and authenticate to it, and I'm going to put in my password. And so now I should be able to SSH to my user, and I'm in. So we've copied, and I'll just show you the authorized keys file over, or the IDRSA over there. We've copied that file over, and now I have SSH access without password. So now what we need to do is we need to copy the files for NSO, and if we do a dir, I have a directory called NSO. These are the files that I downloaded. I mentioned earlier that I downloaded. We've got the Linux x86-64 file, and we have our two NEDs. We're going to do an scp-r NSO to netadmin at 192.168.1.101:tilde, and that's just going to dump it in the home directory. And so now that's done copying, we can SSH back to our system. We can do an ls-l. We can see that the NSO directory is there. So now we're going to go through the process of installing the NSO software. To do that, we can look at this quick start guide, which you'll have access to in the description, and we can see the steps here for performing a local install. So what I've done is I've gone to the NSO directory. We're going to do an ls-l. We need to do an sh as shown in step 2 to unpackage and extract the binary and files from each of these bin directories. So I'm going to do an sh. I'm going to highlight the installer for Linux. We'll go ahead and grab that. Now this is the set of files that we're going to use to actually install NSO. And because we're going to do a local install, we're going to get this NSO 6.5 Linux installer.bin. We're going to right click to get that into our clipboard. We're going to scroll down and you'll see, this is what you should see. There's a couple extra things in here that we're not going to use. It shows you the NSO installer details. You can do a help on it with sh. But what we're interested in is this portion here for local install, which is step 6. And what we're going to do is we're going to run sh on that installer file. We'll do -- local install ~/NSO, and because this is 6.5, we're going to call it _6.5. You can name the folder whatever you want to name it. I'm going to do NSO _6.5. It's going to create a temporary directory, and then once this is done installing, we need to unpackage the NEDs from the binary files that they're in. So I'm just going to wait while that's doing its thing. I'm going to capture that. And once that's done, we're going to do an sh to extract the tar files that are inside the bin. So we'll do sh. We'll do the iOS. And then we'll come here, we'll grab the NX. And we'll do sh again. And if we do an ls-l, we can see that we have the tar.gz for iOS and a tar.gz for Cisco NX. So now NSO is installed. We've unpackaged our bins. You can see here, step 7, NSO is installed. That is it. The software is there. If we back out of this directory now, we can see the NSO 6.5 directory. Inside this directory, you can see there's a lot of different folders. In a system install, all of this would be included. Etsy would have been installed to Etsy. So if we dig into it, we can see there's some directories there. All of this would have been installed in the appropriate system locations if we had done system install. Because this is for development purposes, because this is part of the free trial, we have to do it with local install and that's the appropriate way to use it for, development purposes. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to leave it, here. The next step we need to do is actually get our NEDs installed. So you can come through, we can see we're exploring the installation, see all the directories that we've got. It talks about some network element drivers that are included with the system. So if we go to CD to packages, and we go to NEDs, there's a whole bunch of packages that are already included here. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to, we've already extracted our NEDs. We're going to look at this installing new NEDs section, and we're going to focus on the directory that we're in right now and running this tar-zxvf, which is going to unzip and extract verbose all the files inside the tar file. So we're going to do tar-zxvf /NSO, and it's going to be NCS 65 CLI or Cisco CLI, maybe not, iOS 609, and we're just going to do enter, and that's going to dump it into this directory. So we can see that the iOS CLI 6109 is now in that directory. We'll do the same thing for the NXOS one. So /NSO/NCS 65 Cisco NX, and we've got our tar.gz. So once you get part of the thing, the name defined, you can always tab it out. I try to get into a good habit of tabbing things out instead of trying to type everything. And even if you tab, if I just go back, you can see that it'll show us our different options. So, if you don't know the entire name, much like a Cisco device, Linux will let you tab out and see what the final completion would be. So we've got our NEDs extracted in that directory. We can see the NX one has been added. Now what we need to do is go back. Because this is a local install, this NC source, this NCSRC, we have to source this file. Now it says here that you can set this as part of your variables, like for your bash shell or whatever you're running. I just source the file when I'm doing a local install. If you do a system install, this gets installed as part of your path automatically, so you'll automatically see the commands. But if you do NCS right now, I have none of the NCS commands. So if I source NC source and then type NCS again, we can see now that I've got a variety of different options here to run the NCS commands. And you can see they show down here very similar result. So now that we've got NSO installed, we actually need to create an instance, and this is something very specific to the local install. We need to create an instance of the install. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do this NCS setup. And what we're going to do here is we're going to identify the packages that we want to install as part of this process. And the packages are those NEDs that we just unpackaged into the NED directory. So we're going to do NCS-setup-package /NSO 6.5 packages NEDs Cisco CLI or Cisco iOS CLI. We want 6.109. We're going to do a backslash and hit enter, do package /NSO 6.5 packages NEDs Cisco NX CLI 5. Do another backslash. Now your destination can be whatever you want to call it. I'm going to do tilde again. Do slash. You can do NSO-instance. There are some where it's NCS run. Whatever you want to name this instance, you can call it whatever. I'm going to call it NCS-run. Hit enter. And now if we do an ls-l of tilde, we can see that we have this NCS run directory. Now before we complete this installation, the network element drivers require Java to actually run and operate. And for this specific version of NSO, we need to install the OpenJDK 17 of Java. And so what I'm going to do is I already have this command saved off. We're going to do a sudo apt install OpenJDK 17-JDK. That's going to get us the appropriate version of Java so that we can actually run our NEDs and actually get them installed in the system. So we're going to run that. We're going to say yes. And this is one of those things, like, you could install this as part of the cloud init or Cloud-Config. I didn't install because I want to show you that this is something that's necessary. If you don't install the Java JDK, the NEDs will not start up. There's a Java VM that actually runs those NEDs, and the packages will install, but they'll never be able to start without the appropriate Java version. And we'll see that when we look at the NSO status once we get it running, where it's actually running Java. So we can see the Java is now installed. To start NSO, this is super simple. It could not be any simpler. You just type NCS, and it failed because I'm not in the NCS run directory. So cd.dot/ncs-run, and now type NCS. And so now I've started up NSO. It's going through the process now of installing our packages. This is going to take a decent amount of time to get running. But once that's done, we will have fully configured, ready to go, start doing some things with NSO. And this is kind of where I'm going to wrap up just the installation part of this video. I want to just focus on getting the software installed, getting NEDs installed, what it takes to get NSO running on the Ubuntu host. The next video that we do, I'm going to show you how to actually start managing devices, because that's really where the power of NSO comes in, is being able to manage these devices, make configuration changes in NSO, and then push them to your devices, and also read the current device information that's sitting on your devices in Cisco Modeling Labs, so that you actually can, make that part of the NSO configuration database. It's an extremely powerful tool, but as you'll see once we get this running real quick, it doesn't have a lot out of the box. It's really build it the way you want it to work. So we've got it running. If we do NCS -- status, we see it's running, how much memory it's using. We come up, we can see packages. A little bit further up, we can see loaded packages, and we see status up. If Java is not installed, this status will likely show down or failed or something to that regard, but it will not be running. You have to have Java running. You have to have Java installed for it to actually work. If you do not have the right version of Java, you'll get errors when you try to install the NEDs. So when you do see the errors, it'll come up and say, this version, this manifest of Java doesn't match the one that it was built with. You can go look for the Java version numbers, and it'll show you, if it was built with 59 and you need 61, it'll tell you which version of Java you need to meet up with that version. But here we go. So we've got it running. We can go in now to NCS CLI-C, which just does a traditional CLI, like you're used to with a Cisco device, and our user of admin. We can see the admin is now connected. And yeah, that's it. This is NSO. If I do a show, you can see that we're getting some kind of information about, things that we can run. I can do a question mark. You see a lot of the different options. From a licensing perspective, now there's a detailed deployment guide, which we'll go look at here for local install. I recommend you do this. If you're using this for developer mode, you can come down to the license registration section. You can get an ID token from your smart account and then go into NSO and run the development mode option, which if we go back, once you've got it registered, you just do license smart development. Enable. It's okay. I would have to make this connect with my smart licensing system, just to acknowledge that I am indeed using it for development mode, and get rid of some of the licensing prompts. If we go to configuration, do question mark, you can see again there's some things here that would suggest this looks a lot like a Cisco device. We got AAA, clustered devices. To actually get device configurations done, which we'll talk about in the next video, we actually need to create the devices. And really, that's the CLI. It looks very Cisco-esque in that regard. There is a way to bring it up so it's more Juniper or JSON based. So we'll do I believe it's JU admin. And if I do question mark, let me do show running. And so we got a more JSON-esque, if you've used, Juniper type devices, it looks more like what you'd expect to see there. So yeah, there's different ways to run this. If you like the JSON style, you can do the -J. If you like the CLI style, you can do the C. I prefer the C. I like working with JSON. I like looking at my text in different ways, but I prefer the Cisco CLI for some of the things that I'm doing here. If you want certain configurations, so if we do show devices, so we'll do this and then we'll pipe it. We can say display question mark, and we'll say JSON. Without even using the J, I can look at the JSON output. Now this is showing us the paths and the way, locations of the data. So I've got key value pairs, I've got objects inside the keys, and you're getting that Java-esque look, using just CLI commands and telling it to display it in JSON. Now, the last thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to go into this ncs.conf directory. Now, by default, you get access to the WebUI, but there was a change in the 6.5 version of NSO where the host name has to match when it's trying to connect. If you try to connect to this right now, if I do http://192.168.1.101:8080, it's going to give me a bad request because my host name does not match and it won't take it by IP address. The way to fix this is we come in, we do an open bracket, match host name. Now, by default, this option is set to true. It's not a command that's shown in the configuration. For security purposes, you ideally want this to match. You really want this to be running. For the development purposes, for what we're doing here, because I don't have DNS set up, I'm going to set this to false. And then we're going to close it. Because this is XML, we do the bracket /match host name. And then I'm actually going to disable 8080. I prefer to do everything over HTTPS. I'm using a self-signed certificate, so that's not super secure, but I prefer to run everything over HTTPS, especially from an automation point of view. And it's just as simple as what I just did. I just go in there and just change SSL to true. I disabled the just 8080. And so what I should be able to do now is save that, which I've already done, and do ncs-reload. And all this is going to do is reread the ncs-conf. I should be able to come back to my browser now and go 888 and add an S. And we see now I'm getting this potential security risk ahead. If I had just tried this without that match host name, we would have gotten that 400 not found again. We're going to accept the risk, and now you have access to the Crosswork Network Services Orchestrator UI. The login for local install is always going to be admin. You're going to get this warning about the license. Again, if you want to follow the license instructions to set this up for development mode, go for it. But you don't have a lot in here. If we go look at devices, there's no devices found. We don't have any services yet because we haven't configured anything. The config editor, it's showing you some of the configuration options. We can look at all the different modules. Again, nothing is set up, so there's a lot of room now for you to start using this the way you want to use it, and building out your networks to really act as a service, to really orchestrate your networks. And it's a build it, and kind of figure it out, on your own, like how you want to use it, what your specific use cases are. But this is it. Like, this is all NSO does out of the box. We've got our NEDs set up. If we come into config editor, we should be able to see our, go back. Should be somewhere to see our packages. Oh, packages. Config, no. Tools, packages. And we see that our packages here are up. And so we're ready to start using this. And so that's where our next video is going to start covering is how do we use NSO to start managing our devices? How do we start making configuration changes in NSO to push our devices? How do we activate devices, get authentication set up? We're going to go through all that in the next video. But I hope this is a good video on how to actually get NSO installed, how to get a Ubuntu node running. You can set this up, however you see fit. We're going to make some changes to this because at some point I don't want this to be my default route out for everything. I just want this to be for my internal network. So we'll change this around so that eventually internet access for all the hosts in here reach out through our internet. And maybe we just add another host so that we can do that. But ultimately, we'll build out these internal networks and we're going to do everything just like we do with Ansible. We're only going to use NSO to do it. We will do some stuff to the CLI of the devices just to show you how you can look at the differences in configuration, make sure they're in sync. But yeah, that's where we're going to wrap this up. And, before I start working on the next video, if there's anything you want to see, if there's anything more you want to know about, let me know and I will make sure to cover it in the next video. Thanks for watching.